Your measure is out 8-0. Next, Mr.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Bloom, is item your AB 974, and you may proceed.
Thank you very much. This is AB 974, and it is estimated, Mr. Chair and members, that approximately $715 million in 2011 redevelopment bond proceeds are currently sitting idle and cannot be used. AB 974 authorizes the use of those proceeds, but only if various criteria are met. Specifically, 2011 bond proceeds could only be spent on projects that meet the following criteria. The projects must be consistent with the sustainable community strategy adopted by the appropriate metropolitan planning organization. There must be documented proof that two or more significant planning or implementation actions that are related to the project occurred on or before December 31st, 2010. And lastly, there must also be documented proof that the bond issuance was being worked on prior to December 31, 2010. These last two criteria ensure that the 2011 bond proceeds will only be used for projects that were being actively planned prior to the Governor's announcement regarding redevelopment dissolution. And based on these criteria, we believe that only about 60% of the bond proceeds will be actually able to be used. This will eliminate cities that rush to issue bonds in 2011 in order to lock up funds for future projects that didn't even exist at that time, which was a concern of the Governor and some other folks. Since the Governor's veto of my similar bill, AB 2493, last year, my authors and sponsors have been working with the Department of Finance, as suggested by the Governor, to find a solution to the 2011 redevelopment bond issue. I'm also aware of the RDA trailer bill, and we are hopeful that an agreed-upon solution to this issue can be included in it. However, if there's not a consensus on the entire RDA trailer bill, we will continue to work with the Governor's office and Department of Finance on AB 974 and find a solution to the 2011 bond issue, as the Governor has asked us to attempt to do. Thank you. I ask for your aye vote, and with me today is John Leonard with the City of West Hollywood, who can provide additional detail on the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is John Leonard with the City of West Hollywood. The use of 2011 bond proceeds would provide immediate benefits to the state's economy, specifically 11,000 jobs, $1.6 billion in economic activity, and $76 million in new tax revenues. However, current law requires 2011 RDA bonds to be defeased and their proceeds not spent. But over 90% of these bonds cannot be defeased until 2021. During this period, nearly $1 billion will be spent on debt service payments, and the proceeds will continue to go unused. Statewide, successor agencies hold approximately $715 million in 2011 RDA bond proceeds. The vast majority of these proceeds would be used for projects such as parks, libraries, road improvements, police and fire stations, and over 1,400 affordable housing units. AB 974 will allow successor agencies to use their 2011 bond proceeds only if their projects can meet multiple criteria in the bill and their projects are approved by the Department of Finance through the ROPS process. And as Assemblymember Bloom mentioned, the criteria would only allow the use of approximately 60% of the proceeds. This bill in no way reduces the over $2 billion the state, schools, counties, and local districts currently receive every year for core services from the dissolution of redevelopment. Instead, the bill would result in a minor loss of additional dollars. For example, our analysis estimates that the fiscal impact to the state on average is $5 million per year in today's dollars over the next 29 years. This analysis is based on over 2 years of extensive research, data collection from the affected cities, and various other analyses. AB 974 further limits the state's financial exposure by specifying that any bond proceeds which are not used must be used to defease all or a portion of the bonds. The bill also requires successor agencies to refinance their 2011 bonds to lower interest rates at their call dates. This is important because many of the bonds were issued with high interest rates due to the uncertainty regarding redevelopment in 2011. The savings from these refinancings will go to all affected taxing entities, and this is something that was added into the bill this year that is new from AB 2493. Finally, I would like to mention that last year's bill, AB 2493 was co-authored by 11 legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, and was strongly supported by a variety of public agencies. We respectfully ask for your aye vote and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Carrick on behalf of the League of California Cities in support of the bill. We appreciate all the authors' work last year, as well as the City of West Hollywood, in putting, pulling this issue together and working through all the other issues. And it was a very good bill that was on the governor's desk last year, as is before us now. The author did touch on the issue that I think really concerns most cities right now. Is we have bills like this that are obviously trying to be helpful in terms of the dissolution process with local agencies. We strongly support those. We're very concerned with the trailer bill that's going through a kind of a budget process that isn't as visible as this process is. That trailer bill has many extremely harmful provisions in it to local agencies, and we really encourage this body when there is a revision to that measure, to scrutinize it closely and just make sure that we fully understand the totality of what we're doing related to RDA dissolution. So bills like this, very helpful. Please don't do something that takes us backwards on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further witnesses in support?
Sylvia Solisha on behalf of the City of Santa Monica. We want to thank Assemblymember Bloom for introducing this measure. We believe the criteria will limit the state's fiscal exposure, and it will allow the city to continue vital infrastructure projects that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide options for traffic congestion, and create thousands of construction jobs. We ask for your support.
Thank you. Further witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition?
Okay, thank you. Christina Lackey with the California Special Districts Association. We appreciate the author's attempt to fund projects in former RDAs that could benefit from this bill. However, as local affected taxing entities, special districts could face a big cost if we do see this bill move forward, in addition to the cost to schools and counties. The cost of spending these 2011 RDA bond proceeds are particularly high due to what has been called the Mardi Gras effect, which happened after the governor announced his proposal to dissolve RDAs, but before the dissolution process went through. And as the LAO Legislative Analyst's Office has noted, in the first 6 months in 2011, RDAs issued about $1.5 billion in tax allocation bonds, a level of debt issuance greater than during all of the 12 months of 2010. Additionally, RDAs issued more tax allocation bonds with interest rates exceeding 8% during the first 6 months of 2011 than they did in the previous 10 years. And it is because of these high costs, particularly associated with these bonds, that we are opposed to this bill. We do look forward to continuing to work with the author's office on trying to find maybe perhaps a way to narrow the criteria for actively planned projects. Right now we're concerned that it's overly broad and would include too many projects, but we are looking forward to continuing to work with the author's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Further witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Alejo.
Thank you for bringing this issue forward. As local governments have struggled in the aftermath of the dissolution of redevelopment, dealing with a wide range of issues, and this certainly being one of them. And then when you see the estimated numbers of $750 million in 2011 RDA bond proceeds that are sitting idle, then as policymakers you say, well, what do we do with that? There seems to be a recognition of a problem there, and how do we maximize the benefit with many of the policy goals that we've stated, whether it's reducing greenhouse emissions or improving traffic congestion? How are we going to proceed in resolving this issue that is sitting before us? So that's one, just a comment, but also in terms of, I see the City of West Hollywood as a sponsor. What does it mean for the City of West Hollywood? To give us, illustrate an example of what that means on the local level for you and why your city is interested in advancing this bill forward.
Of course, thank you. For the City of West Hollywood, passage of AB 974 would be significant. In early 2011, in March of 2011, on March 1st, we issued approximately $40 million worth of bonds for projects that we had been planning for nearly a decade. The largest project was a complete renovation of one of the city's largest parks. This project was approximately $35 million, $30 million in bond proceeds, and another $5 million in general fund monies. We are a very dense urban city, and this park has not had any improvements done for several decades, and these improvements would considerably enhance the park and enhance the green space for the many residents that live very nearby. We also issued approximately $7.5 million in affordable housing bonds. We were able to use approximately $3 million worth of those bonds for an affordable senior housing project. The remaining portion of the bonds would go to an affordable housing project that helps homeless youth, seniors, and other low-income individuals.
And then lastly, last question for the authors. The governor vetoed a similar measure last year, 2493, and I know you've had ongoing discussions with his office. Any signal that there might be some tightening of the language that might make it signable this coming session?
Yes, we think the fact that we're discussing trailer bill language, and I should point out that the trailer bill language is under discussion. It's in a state of flux. There are going to be most certainly going to be changes to that language in response to Mr. Carrick's concerns. But also the language that is in the bill that is before you is language that has been carefully crafted in response to a very long series of conversations that we have had in the governor's office.
And I was concerned about the trailer bill language because, of course, there's many different aspects to the trailer bill when it comes to remaining RDA issues. But certainly there was a hearing in this, I think, in this very room for a budget subcommittee where many local cities were kind of outraged that some of the rules were being changed after they followed them, after determinations were made in the court. Then the rules were trying to be changed and made retroactive. So it's certainly something for all of us as legislators to keep an eye on as some of these proposals that are being perhaps trying to be inserted in trailer bills would have an adverse impact on our local governments.
I certainly agree, and my hometown is one of those cities that was concerned in West Hollywood.
Correct. We were also concerned, and we were very concerned with some of the provisions, and we would hope that changes could be made to the trailer bill.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Bloom, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I'll be in opposition today just for essentially for the reasons the governor set forth in his veto message last year that funding for this measure would come at the expense of, and I'm quoting the governor, but would come at the expense of lost property tax dollars to cities and counties that chose not to incur debt during this period, as well as special districts and schools. The cost to the general fund to backfill schools could be significant, to the tune of $500 million at a time when the state is still recovering from deep recession. That was my best imitation, Mr. Alejo. So I will be opposing it today, but do we have a motion? We have a motion from Mr. Cooley, a second from Mr. Alejo. Mr. Cooley, you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there might be a question I've had just how some of my cities would relate to this, but I think this bill has attempted to grapple with an important problem. And I know as a draftsman myself, drafting legislation, I often find myself saying when I put a bill together, it's sort of, well, I like the way I'm doing it wrong, better than the way you're doing it not at all. Someone has to push the idea out, push out the solution. I think this is a part of a deliberative process that we've got. I think we've got subject matter experts working on this. The convoluted nature of what was done in recent years in the law in this area led to some odd consequences. So I just think it's a good bill to bring forward. It's getting people's eyes upon it, which is just the way this deliberative process works. Thank you for bringing it forward, Mr. Bloom.
Seeing no further questions or comments from the committee, we have a motion and a second. I'd ask clerk to please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bloom, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with respect, I certainly do respect your position on this, but I do want to point out that in addition to those parts of the governor's message that you cited, the governor invited us back to the table to discuss resolution of this issue. I wouldn't be back here doing this had that invitation not been extended. I also would like to just focus in very briefly on two issues. One is the special district's concerns about the so-called Mardi Gras period. That is the reason that there are so many conditions that are applied to the whether or not cities can access their redevelopment funds. And finally, there are many salutary projects that are shovel-ready and might be built if this bill ultimately is signed by the governor. I want to point out and reiterate the 1,400 affordable housing units in the face of an extraordinary housing crisis that is causing the cost of housing to go up throughout the state, particularly for poor people. The ability to move forward on 1,400 units, even though it might seem like a small increment, is extremely important and of value to all of us. Thank you. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I ask the clerk to please call the roll.
The motion is do pass and refer to the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Mainshine.
No.
Mainshine, no. Gonzalez. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo. Alejo, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cooley.
Aye.
Cooley, aye. Gordon. Gordon not voting. Holden. Holden, aye. Linder.
No.
Linder, no. Waldron. Waldron, no.
So your bill is out, 5-3.
Thank you.
Mr. Blum.
Thank you.
Next is item number 7, AB 747. Ms. Eggman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Today I'm presenting AB 747, which is a very small district bill. It's a bill intended to streamline a very small requirement of the 200-year flood control standard that applies solely to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Valley. Under comprehensive flood protection,
We have a motion from Mr. Holden, a second from Mr. Alejo.
that was passed in 2007. In essence, anybody who's not living behind a 200-year floodplain bill, and we had much bigger legislation last year, but because the maps have come out, things look much better. What we're asking for right now is a very small fix that says if you can be issued a permit if you're not increasing the amount of occupancy in a building. So it's for remodel, extensions, things like that, not increasing occupancy, very small bill. And with me today, I have Kira Ross from the City of Stockton and Karen Lang from San Joaquin County.
Good afternoon, Kira Ross on behalf of the City of Stockton. We want to thank the author for her years of work on this issue. This has been ongoing for many years. We really believe this is a very measured approach. It allows us to get to some of those very important rehab-type projects that need to happen in a community that without this change in the law, we would just simply not be able to do after 2016. The other thing I would just note very quickly is that this does not affect our requirements to meet adequate progress, nor does it affect our requirement that in 2025 we have to meet 200-year flood protection, which we are completely committed to be doing and getting there by 2025. So with that, we would ask for your support of the bill.
Karen Lang, on behalf of the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, the co-sponsor of the bill. The author and Kira have laid it out perfectly. Their analysis does a great job. We ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none. We have a motion and a second. Oh, and Ms. Eggman, you may close.
I will take your aye votes as my close.
I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
The motion is due pass. Mainshine.
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Gonzalez. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo. Alejo, aye. Chu. Chu, aye. Cooley.
Aye.
Cooley, aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Gordon, aye. Holden.
Aye.
Holden, aye. Linder.
Aye.
Linder, aye. Waldron. Waldron, aye.
Your measure is out, 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Eggman. Next, we will go with Mr. Alejo. Mr. Alejo, you will You will be presenting AB 440. And you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm here before you presenting AB 440 as a matter of fairness for a rural county in my district. This bill brings to closure a dispute between San Benito County and the State Controller's Office regarding the reimbursement to the ERAF, which is the Education Revenue Augmentation Fund, for a prior revenue error which occurred in the fiscal years going back to 1993 through 2001. This is many years ago. AB 440 would deem correct the property tax revenue apportionment factors used by San Benito County to apportion property tax revenues for the fiscal years of 93 to 2001. San Benito County was not alone in making this type of an error and being granted legislative relief. Several other counties did the same, including the County of Riverside, Plumas, Santa Clara, Santa Barbara counties, but they all successfully attained legislative relief in similar disputes of interpretation of the Rev and Tax Code that affected the apportionment and allocation of property tax revenue with the State Controller's Office. AB 440 would provide San Benito County equal relief as other counties have received and relieve them from reimbursing the state $3.5 million and causing a financial burden on this small disadvantaged rural county, one of the poorest in the state of California. Let's apply the same standard of legislative relief to San Benito County. I respectfully ask for an aye vote. And with me today is Supervisor Margie Barrios and Supervisor Anthony Botello, Ray Espinoza, the CAO of San Benito County, and some of my friends, local friends from SEIU Local 521, to speak in support of this bill.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, the committee. AB 440 would be an incredible relief for San Benito County. It would be approximately 10% of our county's general fund. San Benito County is a disadvantaged county, as Assemblyman Alejo alluded to, with unemployment that is higher than the state average. We are being affected by this as a small rural county because we are recovering a lot slower than larger urban counties. Unfortunately, our public safety and county services have suffered greatly with deep cuts and layoffs. I urge your aye vote on AB 440 to provide much-needed relief for small San Benito County that is equal relief provided other counties. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Supervisor Anthony Botello, and I just want to state, add on to the chair's comments, is that even during the best of times, San Benito County struggles, and this money, as small as it is to some of the larger counties, means a lot to our county and what we could do with it. We've asked a lot from our staff, our employees. The working conditions have suffered, and this money will have a direct impact on improving their working environment. And so we certainly would appreciate an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Matt Seiberling on behalf of the State Association of County Auditors, also on behalf of the County of San Benito. Not to be too repetitive, but this has happened 13 times in the past. The state of California has granted relief to counties who have made honest mistakes with ERAF, property tax allocations. We'd ask for nothing but the same, and appreciate your aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Terry Brennan on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. We represent about 700,000 public and private workers in California. Among them are the county employees of San Benito, and I'd like to turn it over to the chapter president.
Mr. Chair and members of the Assembly, my name is Mark Patton. I'm a child therapist for mental health services in San Benito County. I'm also the president of the local 521 chapter of Service Employees International Union. I appreciate you hearing about this. It's so important for us to be able to provide services for the youth, at-risk youth and the people in San Benito County. We've noticed a significant problem in being able to provide appropriate services for all of our people in San Benito County, especially the kids that I work with, and I think passing this bill will make an enormous difference in supporting the workers that I see a lot of turnover rate in our county, but also with the kids that I work with and the families that we try to serve. Anyway, appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further witnesses in support?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Dorothy Holzman with the California State Association of Counties. We are pleased to be in support, and apologies for submitting our letter stating such a little late. Thank you.
Thank you. Further witnesses in support?
Hi, Ray Espinoza, CAO for the County of San Benito. We are definitely in support of this. We have had, over the last 5 years, a difficult time balancing our budget and getting deputies out in the street, so this would go a long ways for us, so we request your support. Thank you.
Thanks. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Motion from Mr. Chu, second from Ms. Waldron. I'd ask Mr. Alejo, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I appreciate the motions. This is something that's very important to me, and it's something that I patiently try to resolve for one of the poorest counties in my district. In fact, going over 14 years ago in terms of this old financial dispute. But this is something I worked on. I filed a bill in 2012, AB 1676. The following year, Senator Canella filed the same bill in 2013, SB 446. And last year, we tried to deal with it by inserting the language into a budget trailer bill. So this is now our fourth year trying to resolve this. And each time we were told that because of the recession, the hard economic times, it wasn't the proper timing. Things are much better this year. And certainly by the time I leave the legislature, I'm hoping that we could resolve this dispute for this county in my district. And I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. We have a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
The motion is due pass, and we refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Mainshine.
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Chu. Aye. Chu, aye. Cooley.
Aye.
Cooley, aye. Gordon.
Aye.
Gordon, aye. Holden.
Aye.
Holden, aye. Linder.
Aye.
Linder, aye. Waldron. Waldron, aye.
9-0. Good.
Your motion is out 9-0.
Thank you, Madam.
Appreciate it.